welcome to the Aussie Football Passport, your one-stop pod for updates on your favourite Aussie men and women footballers who are playing their club careers abroad. I'm your host, Alex, and this week's episode is headlined by the announcement of the Matildas squad that will play in the Asian Cup on home soil over the next 3 weeks. I'll bring you the key talking points of the squad, along with the game times, as well as how I'll cover the games over the coming weeks. All that plus the usual wrap of goals, assists, clean sheets, and even a red card this week. Also, I must apologise for my voice. It is a little bit on the fluey side, but stick with me. You'll want to because this episode is a cracker. Let's get on to the headlines. Now, let's start with that headline, as promised, the Matildas squad for the Asian Cup. And the key talking points are the omission of Charlie Grant, who's been out injured for Tottenham since November last year. However, she did return in the 3-2 win over London City Lionesses in the FA Cup. She didn't get any minutes, but she was named on the bench. This ultimately opened the door for Brighton and Hove Albion's Charlie's Rule, I believe. The other is the inclusion of Alex Tobin, who was the Women's Player of the Week last week, if you remember, and if you were listening to last week's episode. Tobin is a different player to Fowler, but it is certainly a selection that will allow the Matildas to have multiple different profiles of creative players in their midfield for the tournament. This will be key to unlocking the deep-lying defences that they will face in the group stages, and no doubt in the hopefully the latter stages of the tournament. Now, Mary Fowler, she is returning to the squad in some fantastic news. It's the first time she's been named since sustaining that ACL injury in April last year. And whilst it's a huge gamble from Joe Montemurro, it is ultimately one he had to take because Fowler is the kind of game breaker this side will need if they are to go on and win this Asian Cup. Goalkeeper Jada Wyman has also been named following an injury that ruled her out of the past 2 international windows and therefore not allowing Joe Montemurro to get a closer look at her in more recent times anyway. Now, speaking of goalkeepers, Tegan Micah was initially named in the Matilda squad, but she has been ruled out of the Asian Cup in a massive, massive blow to not only her, but the team's hopes. This is due to concussion symptoms, unfortunately. So Micah has been replaced in the side by Chloe Lincoln, who will join the squad from Brisbane Roar. So she plays in the A-League Women's and is only one of 3 players from the domestic league to be in this squad. Lincoln made her international debut in December 2024 against Chinese Taipei. Now, getting back to the rest of the squad selections, now to another one that I guess it was line ball. It was that extra wing spot, and it's gone to Carly Johnson instead of Courtney Vine. Of course, Courtney Vine remembered for her penalty heroics in that FIFA World Cup in 2023 here in Australia. Unfortunately, Courtney just wasn't getting the minutes, it's probably fair to say. Carly Johnson has looked a little bit more sprightly and no doubt will provide a little bit extra in that wing spot if called upon in this tournament, which no doubt she will. All right, now let's hear from Joe Montemurro on the principles that guided him in selecting this squad.
I mean, it's always a tough decision. It's always an interesting sort of process leading up into it. But we had a cut-off time to get the squad announced or the squad into AFC and FIFA. So the biggest thing for me was to make sure that the nature of the tournament, it being such a short tournament and quick turnaround, is that we had players who were consistently playing and ready to play. We weren't in a position to bring players in that were sort of coming back from injury or coming back from situations where we had to modify them through the camp. We just didn't have that opportunity. But the beauty of it and the biggest thing for me was to find good balance in the squad, good balance that each scenario is adhered to, meaning that if we get a situation where we lose a player early or we go a goal down, we've got the opportunity to make those impacts. So we needed players ready, we needed players prepared, and we needed players who could make the impact in those situations.
Thanks to Football Australia for that audio of Joe Montemurro there talking about his squad selection. Now, staying on the Matildas theme, the PFA will honour Matildas legend Lydia Williams with the prestigious Alex Tobin medal during the 2026 Asian Cup. It'll recognise her extraordinary contribution to Australian football and her long-standing leadership within the player movement that is the PFA. Lydia's international career spanned almost 2 decades and saw her represent the Matildas at 5 World Cups, 6 Asian Cups, 2 Olympic Games, and the 2006 Under-20 World Cup. Congratulations to Lydia, and can't wait to see her get that award. It is very much well deserved. Now, Alex Parkes has selected a 25-player squad for a domestic training camp to be held in Sydney. This camp will play a key role in the team's preparations for the Under-20 Women's Asian Cup, which will be held in Thailand in April. Of the 25-player squad, there is one player, Jasmine Black, who plays overseas, and the rest are domestically based here in Australia. 15 players retain their spots from the successful qualification campaign, and no doubt the girls will be chomping at the bit for that tournament. Stephen Hall, who was the goalkeeper for the men's under-20 side at the Asian Cup last year and was, of course, key to that dramatic penalty shootout victory in the final, has been recognised by Football Australia and the PFA by being awarded the Dylan Tombides Medal. The medal is given to a player who exemplifies the standards, commitment and courage of the late Dylan Tombides when representing Australia at youth international level. It was revealed later on that Stephen's granddad passed away just before that final and was a big reason why he made that incredible performance and why he's getting this award. Now to some more Socceroos news, and we have the Socceroos finalising their preparations for the World Cup campaign by securing a friendly with co-host Mexico at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California on the 30th of May this year. It will be the final game before the Socceroos squad is selected for the World Cup. The sides last met back in September 2023, which ended in a draw. Ante Suto has confirmed his eligibility for the Socceroos is via his father, who hails from Melbourne but migrated back to Croatia. He also revealed to the Edinburgh Evening News that he has had contact from Football Australia, so watch this space. Now, speaking of potential Socceroos and their eligibility, well, the Cristian Volpato debate has reignited after 4 years being dormant. Of course, Coach Graham Arnold, or former coach of the Socceroos, Graham Arnold, tried to convince Cristian to play in the 2022 World Cup for Australia. Now, the debate has been reignited with Italian media outlet Tutto Mercato reporting that Paul Ocon, of course, the Socceroos assistant coach, and Socceroos boss Tony Popovic were in Italy at the weekend in an attempt to get Cristian Volpato to play for the Socceroos at the upcoming World Cup. They were in the stands at Mapei Stadium on Friday night local time to watch Sassuolo's 3-0 win over Hellas Verona. Volpato was an unused substitute in the match, but the two special guests were apparently there to convince him to join the Socceroos. Well, it's an interesting debate, of course. I've certainly made my opinion clear on it. If he doesn't want to play, why are we wasting our time? Of course, he is a talented player and one that could certainly provide this Socceroos squad a complete X factor. That we've got a couple of players that can provide something different. Volpato can provide something different again, and he is playing at Serie A level, which should not be sneezed at, considering that there aren't a lot of Australians playing in the top flights in the top European leagues. So we'll no doubt watch this one rumble on over the next couple of weeks to see if he does get named in those March games. Now, rounding out the headlines with injury news, it has been confirmed by Middlesbrough that Sam Silvera has broken a metatarsal in his foot and is not expected to return until April, in a bitter blow to his World Cup hopes, considering that injury to Lewis Miller last week. All right, that is it for the headlines. Next up, the weekly wrap. All right, let's start the weekly wrap in Mexico with a Matilda that she'll be a little bit upset that she didn't get into that Asian Cup squad, but it's Emily Gilnick, who came on at halftime with her team 5-0 up, of course, Monterrey against Atletico San Luis. She made it 6-0 in the 61st minute, which was the final score. Now to Sweden, where cup action continued, and Jada Wyman played the first half as she returned from injury for her side AIK as they defeated Linköping 1-0. It was a timely return for her with her call-up to the Matildas side for the Asian Cup. Amy Sayer was on the score sheet for her new side, Malmo FF, for the first time in their 4-1 victory over Umeå. She played the full game whilst fellow Matilda and teammate in Sweden, Courtney Nevin, started and played 72 minutes. Now to England, where Arsenal played OH Leuven and beat them 3-1 in the second leg of their Women's Champions League playoffs, and it sends them through to the quarterfinals. Caitlin Ford started and played the full game, whilst Steph Catley was a second-half substitute, getting 16 minutes. Kyra Cooney-Cross was not named in the matchday squad for that one. Then at the weekend, they returned to domestic action, but in the form of the FA Cup. Arsenal beat Bristol City 3-0. Steph Catley and Caitlin Ford both started, with Catley being substituted in the 89th minute and Ford playing out the whole game, whilst Kyra Cooney-Cross was not in the matchday squad due to illness. Brighton and Hove Albion beat West Ham 2-1. Charlie's Rule started and played the full game in defence for Brighton, whilst Katrina Gorry came on in the 64th minute for West Ham. Sam Kerr was on the score sheet as Chelsea overcame Manchester United in extra time. The final score in that one was 2-1. Kerr scored the first goal of the game 6 minutes after coming on as a second-half substitute in the 72nd minute. So she scored in the 78th minute there, if your maths is no good like mine. Ellie Carpenter played all 120 minutes for Chelsea at right back. And in a sight for sore eyes, Mary Fowler started her first game for Manchester City since her ACL injury in their 4-0 victory over Sheffield United. She played 63 minutes in that one in a nice warm-up for the Asian Cup. Now rounding out the action in England with Claire Wheeler, who started and played the full game in midfield for Everton as they were knocked out of the FA Cup by Liverpool in the Merseyside derby. Rounding out the action in Italy for our ladies, Alex Chidiac started and played the full game for Como as they defeated Genoa 1-0. She signed off from club football as her side sits 5 points from the European places. Winona Heatley started and played the full game, helping Roma to their clean sheet and 1-0 victory over Inter Milan. Roma is now 6 points clear in the league, but will be without their defensive linchpin for the next couple of weeks. Let's hope they can cope without her. Now to a couple of ladies who missed out on the Matildas squad. Jacinta Galabadaracci played 17 minutes of Sassuolo's 3-2 defeat to Fiorentina. Jessica Nash was on the bench but got no minutes in that one. Now to our men in action abroad. And let's start in the championship, where Daniel Benny got 11 minutes off the bench for QPR and scored an absolute stunner, which helped his side to a 3-1 victory over Hull. And in another positive note, Jalen Pearman was on the bench for QPR, which was the first time in a very long time. Mohamed Toure played 71 minutes and grabbed an assist as Norwich lost 2-1 to Birmingham. He was unlucky not to score as he had 5 shots on goal and, more importantly, couldn't make it 3 weeks in a row as the men's player of the week. I'm sure you will get back there, Mohamed, in no time. Riley McGree came off the bench in the 60th minute as Middlesbrough drew 0-0 with Oxford United. Nesteri Irankunda returned for Watford after his suspension and played 68 minutes in a 2-0 win over Callum Elder's Derby County. Elder played 62 minutes for County in that one. Cameron Burgess played a full game for Swansea, helping his side to keep a clean sheet in a 1-0 win over Bristol City. Adrian Segacic came on in the 70th minute for Portsmouth in a 3-1 win over third-placed Millwall. Now dropping down a division to League One, and Alex Robertson played 65 minutes for Cardiff City in midweek as his side had a 4-1 win over AFC Wimbledon. At the weekend, he then played a full game for Cardiff City in their 5-2 loss to Plymouth Argyle. Joe Gauci started and played the full game in goal for Port Vale in midweek as his side went down in a 2-1 loss to Stevenage. He then played another full game in goal for Port Vale at the weekend as they drew 1-1 with Reading. And in some unfortunate news, Rafael Borges Rodriguez was substituted just before halftime for Wigan Athletic in a 1-0 win over Luton Town in midweek. He picked up an injury and could not continue, but there is no further news from his club, Wigan, at this stage. But we will keep you posted as those right-back options dwindle by the week for the Socceroos. Now to Scotland, where Nicholas Milanovic started and played the first half of Aberdeen's 2-0 victory over Motherwell in the Scottish Cup in midweek. However, the game was marred by some questionable VAR calls, one of which was to send Aussie midfielder Oscar Priestman off after just 2 minutes of the game. He slipped and made a challenge on one of the Aberdeen players, and that was enough for a VAR review and to send him off. Incredible stuff. In total, there were 3 red cards in this one. John Kajumbris was not in the matchday squad for Motherwell in that game. At the weekend, Motherwell thumped St Mirren 5-0 in Scottish League action. Priestman bounced back from his red card, playing the whole game for Motherwell, whilst Keanu Bacchus made his return from injury, coming on at halftime for St Mirren. Kajumbris was not in the matchday squad for Motherwell, and it is a handful of games he has missed now. There's no injury news on him, so we're not quite sure what is happening with that. I'll follow it up and find out if there is any more news on that in next week's show. Ryan Strain played a full game for Dundee United in their 2-1 win over Spartans in the Scottish Cup in midweek. Fellow Aussies and teammates Ashley Maynard-Brewer started and played the full game in goal, while Zach Sapsford came off the bench in the 56th minute. Ryan Strain came on in the 37th minute for Dundee United as they returned to Scottish Premier League action at the weekend in a 1-1 draw with Kilmarnock. Ashley Maynard-Brewer started and played the full game in goal, while Zach Sapsford got 19 minutes as a substitute. Martin Boyle played 60 minutes, whilst Jack Idow played a full game for Hibernian in a 2-1 win over Celtic. Ante Suto was subbed on for Boyle and provided the desired impact, providing an assist for the winning goal for his side in a giant killing effort, and to the chagrin of Hibs supporters, actually helping out Hearts to stay top of the league there. Rounding out the action in Scotland, Ryan McGowan played a full game for Livingston in a 2-2 draw with Rangers, which helps Hearts maintain their spot at the top of the table as well. Now to Germany, where Jackson Irvine played 80 minutes for St. Pauli in a 2-1 win over Werder Bremen in a 6-pointer relegation battle. An important win for St. Pauli there to keep their survival hopes alive and to suck Werder Bremen into that fight. Now to Spain, where Matt Ryan started and played the full game in goal for Levante in a 1-0 loss to Villarreal in midweek. He then backed it up by playing another full game in goal for his side, this time in a 3-0 loss to Barcelona at the weekend. Believe it or not, even though it was a 3-0 loss, it could have been a lot worse if it wasn't for our Socceroos captain. He made an incredible double save to prevent it from going to 4-0. Now dropping down to the second division in Spain, where Mabil played 58 minutes for Castellón in a 1-1 draw with Las Palmas. Now to Croatia, where Fran Karasic played a full game for NK Osijek in a 3-1 loss to one of his former sides, NK Lokomotiva. Now to the Netherlands, where Arden Hrustic played a full game for Heracles Alamello in a heavy 4-0 loss to the go-ahead Eagles. Reece Bozanovsky played the first half alongside Hrustic in midfield. Max Ballard played 84 minutes for NAC Breda in a 1-0 win over FC Volendam. Now to Austria, where Jacob Italiano played 89 minutes for Glazer AK in their 1-0 loss to Hartberg. Jed Drew came on at halftime for his side Hartberg, helping them to victory over his fellow Australian. Now to Denmark, where Paul Itzo played a full game in goal for Randers FC in a 2-1 loss to FC Fredericia. Moussa Touré came off the bench to get 22 minutes for Randers. Now to Czechia, where Garan Quol came on in the 74th minute for Sparta Prague in their 1-1 draw with FC Victoria Plzeň. Now, let's head to the USA, where the MLS kicked off. But before we get there, so did the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Patrick Yazbek played 27 minutes as his side Nashville defeated Atletico Ottawa 2-0. At the weekend, as the MLS started, Nashville also began their season with a strong 4-1 victory over New England Revolution. Yazbek started and played 72 minutes in midfield for his side there. Now to Lucas Harrington, a new recruit to the MLS. He started and played the full game for Colorado Rapids in their 2-0 loss to the Seattle Sounders. The defender justified his manager's decision to play him ahead of ex-Arsenal defender Rob Holding with 13 defensive contributions and completing 89 of 92 passes. What an incredible debut for Lucas there. Kai Truan and Aidan O'Neill both started in midfield for New York City FC in their 1-1 draw with LA Galaxy. Truan played 87 minutes whilst O'Neill got 73 minutes in that one. Alex Bonnetig started and played 84 minutes for Portland Timbers in their 3-2 win over Columbus Crew. Ariaf Piol started and played 84 minutes for Real Salt Lake in their 1-0 loss to Vancouver Whitecaps. Whilst he won all 5 of his duels, he missed a 1-on-1 chance against the Whitecaps keeper and will no doubt be wanting to make up for that in next week's game. Rounding out the action in the MLS with Kai Rolls, who played a full 90 minutes and kept a clean sheet in DC United's 1-0 win over Philadelphia Union. Now to round out the weekly wrap with our men in Japan, where Kusuni Engi came on in the 74th minute for Cerezo Osaka in a 2-1 loss to Sanfrecce Hiroshima. Jason Guerrier played a full game and scored for Albirex Niigata in a 3-0 win over Kamatamare Sanoki. All right, that is it for the weekly wrap. Next up, Players of the Week, and I'll wrap up this week's episode. It is Players of the Week time, and our Women's Player of the Week signed off before joining the Matildas in style. It's Hayley Raso. She came on as a halftime substitute for Eintracht Frankfurt and scored after 6 minutes of being on the pitch to help her side win 3-2 in the second leg of their Europa Cup tie against FC Nordschland. Her side progresses to the next stage, but this was the last game for Raso before she departed to that Asian Cup, and no doubt they will miss her goal-scoring abilities. Now to our Men's Player of the Week, it is Jordan Boss, who played the first half and assisted twice for Feyenoord as they defeated Telstar 2-1. He played as a left winger in this one, which is interesting to know, and it certainly helped with his ability to create for his teammates. No doubt Tony Popovic will have had the notebook out and potentially we'll be thinking if Jordan Boss should be moved further up the field for the Socceroos. All right, well, that is it for another week of the Aussie Football Passport. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you can share the show with anyone, it would be greatly appreciated. I'll also be bringing you a preview show for the Matildas Asian Cup campaign, so stay tuned for that one. I can't wait to bring it to you. And I'll also be doing a weekly recap of the Matildas' performances and results from around the grounds of the Asian Cup over the next 3 weeks, as the Asian Cup is here in Australia. Don't forget that. The first game is on Sunday, the 1st of March, where Australia are taking on the Philippines in Perth. Check your local guides as to what time that kicks off as well, just with the time differences around the country, of course. They're very important to note. All right, thanks for listening. I'll catch you in the next episode. It's goodbye for now.